Hello, everyone. Am I audible? Yes. Okay, fine. So, today is the second tutorial of week two. I am Geetika Agarwal. I am a PhD scholar at IIC Bangalore and I work in the Center for Ecological Sciences. I will be taking the second tutorial of the course Animal Physiology, which is offered by Professor Mainak Das. I would like this to be an interactive session. In today's tutorial, I will majorly be summarizing about the integumentary system that was discussed in this week, and then we'll move on to some to the question answer session. I will not be engaging in discussing bones and cartilage in detail. You can attend the other tutorial sessions to get to know more about that or look at the lectures themselves. Okay, so moving on to the integumentary system. So the integumentary system can be structured into two different categories. Can anybody tell me what are these two categories of the integumentary system? Anybody would like to answer this question? The integumentary system can be further classified into two things. No one? Okay, so here is the general classification of the integumentary system. It consists of the cutaneous layer and of the accessory structures. And this cutaneous layer, or which is also called the skin, is further divided into the epidermis and the dermis. The epidermis, as you might already know, is the superficial epithelial layer. We'll be discussing much more about this. And the dermis is the underlying layer of connective tissue. Accessory structures of the integumentary system include the hair, the nails, and the multicellular exocrine glands. Okay? So, moving on to discussing the functions of skin as an organ. So, can you guys tell me or list out certain functions that skin plays as an organ? I hope you all would have thought about this at some point in your life. So, what are the different functions that skin plays as an organ for us? It's a protective barrier, correct? So, it protects us from what? What is a barrier against? Prevents dehydration, that's true. It's a thermoreceptor, yes, and it helps us maintain the internal temperature of the body for the excretion of water, external harmful substances. So, you guys are correct. So, coming to the different functions of skin as an organ, it's a sensory organ, very correct. So, it protects us, as you guys mentioned, it protects us against abrasion or against, you know, getting wounded very quickly, and it protects us against different microbial infections. It prevents dehydration, as some of you have been mentioning, because it prevents the loss of water from our body. But it also allows us to excrete the excess amount of water that we might have during osmoregulation, as we discussed in the last week. So it allows excretion of water, salt, and organic matters in the form of sweat. It allows the maintenance of internal temperature, as some of you were saying, and by different mechanisms like insulation when we are feeling cold or when the temperature is cold outside, or by evaporative cooling when it's hot outside and we need to lose some of the water so that it evaporates and we can maintain a cool internal temperature. And as you mentioned, it allows us to synthesize vitamin D by absorbing UV rays from the sun. And the adipocytes present in the subcutaneous layer, they store various nutrients. So these are some functions of skin as an organ. And as you mentioned, sensory organ, it is the largest organ of the body, and it is sensitive to stimuli. So, this is a small comic which says that skin is the largest organ in the body. It is often represented with a cubic cross section that makes it look like a fancy little cake, but it's actually the largest organ that covers our entire body from head to toe. So, let's try and label this cross section of the skin. So, can you guys see my pointer? I'll be pointing this pointer to different parts of the diagram. Can you guys please try and label those? So, what is this thing here? What do you think is this? It's the hair, but okay, it's what part of the hair? It's the shaft. Very correct. This is the shaft. What is this? What is this tube like thing here which connects to something down? What is this part? Is the sweat pore? Then here we have two things. One of them is like a valley and the other one is like a mountain. What are these things called? The one that is one curves downwards and one curves upward. Do you guys know what are these called? Yeah, it starts the dermis layer. One of them is like the ridge, and the other one is the epidermal ridge, and the other one is it's the dermal papillae. So we have skin divided into three different layers. And as I discussed earlier, the uppermost layer is called the epidermis, the mid one is the dermis, and the lower one is the hypodermis. And here we're trying to label different parts. So, what is this thing that is next to the hair? What is this called? This accessory glandular structure. It's a sebaceous gland, correct? And this muscle tissue that it's connecting the hair to this layer of skin is called. What is this muscle structure that connects the hair shaft, or say the hair to the epidermis? Erector pili muscle, correct. So you guys are correct. So this is most of the things. As you can see, hair is the this is like the hair follicle. These are the blood vessels. So moving on. So you guys were mostly correct. So we have, as I said, we have the epidermis, the dermis, the hypodermis. In the epidermis, the uppermost layer is like the stratified squamous epithelium. This is the hair shaft, as you said, the sweat duct, basal layer, epidermal ridges, as you mentioned, the sebaceous gland, erector pili muscle, the sweat gland, the hair follicle, the hair root, blood supply to the skin, nerves, nerve endings, as we can see here, and the adipose tissue of the subcutaneous layer. So, this is how a cross section of the skin looks like. And if you are asked to label these, I hope you will be able to do that in your exams. So, there are some details about the epidermis. It's a five layered structure. So, can you guys tell me what are these five layers? So, what is this lowermost layer called? So, there are these one, two, three, four, five layers of the epidermis. So, let's try and name them in order from the lowermost to the topmost. Yeah, stratum basal or stratum germinativum, correct. Ciliated epithelium, okay. Which one is the ciliated epithelium out of these? Stratum lucidum, okay. I think we're going in no order right now. Stratum germinatum, spinosum, granulosum, correct. So, okay. So, these five layers are basically called from bottom to top the stratum basale, as some of you mentioned, or stratum germinativum, then spinosum, then granulosum, lucidum, and corneum. So, here is like a mnemonic to remember this. So, to remember these layers from top to bottom, it's you can remember this mnemonic saying, "Come, let's get sunburnt," because then it would mean it's the corneum, then lucidum, then granulosum, spinosum, and basal layer. Okay, so that's like an easy way to remember these five layers. But remember that this mnemonic works in the top to down fashion and not the other way around. Okay, so moving on to the first layer that we discussed, which is the bottommost layer. We're going in the down to up fashion because the keratinocytes, they are formed from the lowermost layer and then they move upwards towards the topmost layer as the stratum corneum. So this is a diagram showing how different layers look like and what they contain, and we'll be discussing these one by one in greater detail. So the stratum germinativum, as you all might be aware, it's like this. It's also called the. Can we download lectures? Which lectures are you talking about? Okay, this yeah, the recording of this video will be provided as well as these presentations will also be shared with you. Okay, so moving on. So the lowermost layer, as we discussed, is called the stratum basale, and it contains three types of cells like the Merkel cells, the melanocytes, and the basal cells. So, and this structure, stratum germinativum, as was discussed in the lectures, it forms epidermal ridges, which means it forms this uh, sort of crest and trough sort of a structure, where these ridges they help and increase the surface area, and it's anchored to the basement membrane. The cells of this layer are anchored to the basement membrane by these things, by these structures called hemidesmosomes. So it's like an important term that you would like to remember, that the cells of the stratum basale are attached to each other as well as to the basement membrane by structures called hemidesmosomes. And the different cell types in this, as I said earlier, include the basal cells or the stem cells from which the keratinocytes they start to differentiate and then they move upwards. And then there are the Merkel cells, and then there are the melanocytes. So, coming to discuss the Merkel cells and the melanocytes, can anybody define these structures to me, or like tell me what these are and what they do? What are Merkel cells? Where are they mostly found? And what do they do? And similarly, what are melanocytes? Hi, Almas. I actually do not know if the assignment will be, they will be accepting it or not. Since it is like, that's like an automated thing, I think you should just try and, do the assignment and try and submit. Like, if you go to that page, you will know if they are accepting responses now or not. I'm not really aware of that. Okay, everyone. So, can you guys tell me what are Merkel cells and what are melanocytes? Merkel cells are present where there are no hair, correct? And what are they? What do they do, or what are they known for? Anyone? What do Merkel cells do? They're sensitive to touch and they secrete chemicals which stimulate sensory nerves. Very correct, Varshita. Sorry, and they're present in areas with less hair, as one of you said, and they're sensitive to touch and secrete neurotransmitters to signal the nerve endings. So both of you are correct. So on the other hand, what are melanocytes and what are they responsible for? Membrane bound granules called melanocytes accumulate melanin. So melanocytes, They are not the membrane bound granules. I think you are trying to refer melanosomes. So melanocytes, they give the dark coloration, correct? So these are cells, these are pigment cells. They contain the pigment that's called melanin, and this melanin is stored in vesicles that are called melanosomes. And this melanin is responsible for also absorbing UV light and consequently for the production of vitamin D. Okay, so moving on to the second layer, which is the stratum spinosum. This layer, as you can see in this diagram, it is here the cells are attached to each other by structures called desmosomes. So as we studied in the stratum basale, the structures are connected to the basement layer by hemidesmosomes. The cells in stratum spinosum are connected to each other by structures called desmosomes. Okay, and this layer is responsible for the production of the epidermal growth factor. This is also something that you would like to remember, that which layer of the epidermis is responsible for the production of epidermal growth factor. It's the stratum spinosum. And this layer has these cells called the cells of Langerhans, and these cells are responsible for an immune reaction against microbes, and consequently they prevent any superficial skin cancer. So this is also an important thing to remember, that what are cells of Langerhans and how do they do. How to view and submit the assignment. I think you'll have to just go to the NPTEL portal and open the course there. I can share you the link for the course, I think. One second. And you just basically have to open this link and go to the assignment 2 tab. Okay. Since you're taking the course, I think you should have known where to find the assignment. Okay. So moving on from the second layer, which is the stratum spinosum, let's come to talking about the third layer, the stratum granulosum, and it is known for its granular appearance. Can you guys tell me why does the stratum granulosum appear granular? What is it that causes this granular appearance? Anyone who knows the answer, you can type it out in the chat box, or you can unmute and tell me. What is it that leads to the granular appearance of stratum granulosum? Why the name granulosum? Nobody? Did you guys go through the week's lectures? So okay, stratum granulosum is called so because of the presence of keratinocytes here. And when keratinocytes, they move from the spinosum layer to the granulosum layer, they undergo differentiation and they begin to produce a large amount of the protein which is called keratin. And you might have heard of the protein keratin, as it is also present in our hair and in our nails. So these cells called keratinocytes, they start producing large amounts of keratin protein when they move from the spinosum layer to this granulosum layer. And what happens is these keratin fibers, when they develop in the cells become thinner and flatter, and these keratin fibers give a granular, you know, appearance to stratum granulosum. And when the cells become thinner and flatter and they are filled with these keratin fibers, they become less permeable to water, and they form a meshwork which makes our skin impermeable to water, or like less permeable to water, not impermeable, because some amount of water can still enter your skin. And so keratin forms keratohyalin, which leads to this dense granular structure. Okay, so I hope I'm clear. And this is all about stratum granulosum. And if so, I think it's clear why it appears granular. It's because of these keratin fibers or keratohyalin structures. Moving on to stratum lucidum and stratum corneum, these are the top two layers of the epidermis. The stratum lucidum is an almost transparent layer, and the cells are filled with keratin. Okay, And the stratum corneum is the topmost layer. It is made up of dead keratinocytes, because by the time the keratinocytes move from the basement, the stratum basal, topwards towards the corneum, they differentiate, and the corneum is made up of terminally differentiated keratinocytes, which are also called corneocytes. And these are dead keratin cells which stay here for about 2 weeks before they are shed off from the skin. This is the surface that's exposed to the outermost environment. And the keratinization, it is a process which is the process of formation of the protective superficial layer of, of the cornified cells which are filled with keratin. Keratin is the protein that we were discussing about earlier. So it is important to remember this definition of keratinization. It's the process of formation of the superficial layer of cornified cells. Okay, so this was all about the 5 layers of epidermis that are found in the skin. Now let's move on and discuss the dermis. So the dermis, or the which is the layer that is found just beneath the epidermis, it can be divided into 2 layers: the papillary layer and the reticular layer. So the papillary layer has 3 different structures. It includes areolar tissue, capillaries, and sensory neurons, also percolate till the papillary layer. And the reticular tissue, it contains loose connective tissues, collagen, and elastin. Can you guys tell me what is the function of collagen and what is the function of elastin? I think this is a pretty basic question. So, what roles do collagen and elastin play in our skin? Nourish. Okay. That is not correct. Anybody else would like to attempt?
Provides structure.
Provides what? Sorry, I could not hear you. Structure. Correct. Collagen provides structure. And what is the use of elastin? Like, you could just get an idea from the term itself. What does elastin do? Stretch, yeah, it provides stretchability to the skin. Correct. So you would know that if we stretch our skin, it you can stretch it and it would go back to normal, it would go back to flat. So this is all is possible because of collagen and elastin. So these are two muscles, and when we are younger, there is a lot of collagen and elastin that is present, and it keeps the skin in place. And as we get old, it leads to these wrinkles because these collagen muscles, they begin to uh, get disrupted, or they begin to break down, and that is what leads to a wrinkly appearance in old skin. Collagen gives shape, as you mentioned, it provides structure, and elastin, as the term suggests, provides elasticity and stretchability. And if the dermis is stretched beyond a particular limit, then it gets permanently damaged. That can lead to wrinkles, or it can lead to stretch marks. Okay, so moving on to skin color. So, can you guys tell me how do we get the color of the skin that we have, and what is it governed by? What is our skin color governed by? Why are some people of a lighter skin color and others of a darker skin color? Due to melanin, correct. So how why are some people of the lighter color and some of the darker color? Because of genetics, true. And how does genetics play a role? Like, what uh there is one abiotic factor that plays an important role in deciding the amount of melanin that we have. So genetically, people have been evolved to have certain concentrations of melanin. So what is that factor that controls these different concentrations of melanin? There is an abiotic factor. Anyone? It's a very simple answer actually. We're looking for an abiotic factor. Correct. Sun. UV rays. Exactly. So people, that are that tend to be more exposed to the UV rays, which face a higher exposure, maybe because they are closer to the equator, they would have a darker skin because of protective reasons, so that so as to not let UV rays penetrate deeper into the skin or deeper into the nuclei of the cell to prevent mutations. And people with lighter skin have low amounts of melanin because they are not exposed to UV rays that much as dark skinned people are, and so therefore they do not need that much amount of protection. So skin color means pigment, and the pigment that we're talking about here is basically melanin plus carotene. Melanin is what we discussed about, which leads to the darkness or lightness of our skin, and carotene basically is the orange yellowish pigment, which we can remember by the term carrot, and it leads to the production of vitamin A. Melanin is found in melanocytes, and it is produced in melanocytes from the amino acid which is tyrosine. So the amino acid tyrosine gets converted into melanin inside these melanocytes, and these are found in the stratum basale or the stratum germinativum. And there is a difference in how many layers the melanin is found in fair skinned and lighter skinned and darker skinned people. So, as you can see from this diagram, in lighter skinned people, the melanin only goes so far, it does not go to the upper layers. But in darker skin pigment, melanin is found even in the upper layers of the skin. And as you all mentioned, melanin has a function of absorbing UV rays and protecting us from these. And it is packed in vesicles, which are called melanosomes. So, these are some terms that you might want to keep in mind. And as we discussed in the previous one, fair skinned and dark skinned people, even in this image, you can see in the highly pigmented skin, the melanin or the melanosomes reach to the upper layers, to even the third layer of the skin. But in lightly pigmented people, the melanin is only found in the first and the second layers of the skin. Sorry. So, in the fair skinned people, because they are less exposed to UV rays, they do not need so much melanin, and the melanocytes only are found in the layers 1 and 2. And they also have lighter hair, which is not as dense as is found in darker skinned people. And on the opposite side, darker skinned people have high UV rays exposure. Melanocytes or melanosomes are concentrated till the layer 3, and we have darker hair and denser hair to protect us from UV rays. So, coming to the structure of hair. So, we know that hair is found in most parts of the body, but we do not find hair in the palms of our hand or in the soles of our feet or on the lips. But other parts of our body are mostly covered with hair to different extents. So, can we guys now try and label these two diagrams of hair? This one, as we've discussed earlier, I think most of you will be aware. So, what is this called? We just discussed this in the previous diagram as well. What is this part of the hair called? It's the shaft. And then we move on to the lower part of the hair. What is this called? What is this section right here from here to here? Anyone? It's the follicle. Okay. So then what is this? The one that is here, the lower, you know, root. Okay. Okay, fine. So when we look at the structure of the hair, we basically have the shaft, as you mentioned. Then we have the root. This one is not the follicle. This is the root of the hair, and the bulbous structure here at the bottom is basically the hair follicle from which the hair starts growing. And we have certain glands that are associated with the hair. We have these sebaceous glands, as we discussed earlier, which lead to the secretion of oil, which keeps our skin moisturized. We have these arctic muscles, which are responsible for which phenomena? Can you guys name the phenomena that arrectopili muscles are responsible for? What is the phenomena that these muscles control? The arrectopili muscles. Hi Almas, what do you mean by is all the lecture live? As in goosebumps, correct. So the arrectopili muscles leads to goosebumps. And then moving on to the further definition, we have keratinocytes here present on the inner layer of the hair, and we have the hair matrix here, and then we have melanocytes as well, which lead to the color of the hair that we have. If we have more melanocytes, we'll have darker pigmented hair. And then there is this papilla, which where these we have these arteries or the blood flow in this area. Okay, so, moving on to the kinds of hair, we basically have three kinds of hair that were discussed in class. So, we have the lanugo hair, which is mostly found in embryos which are inside their. So, yeah, today's tutorial is live. So, we have three tutorials per week, Almas. One is on Friday, I think, which was yesterday. One is today on Saturdays, and one is on Tuesdays. So, all these three tutorials will be live, and they will also be provided as recordings on YouTube. So you can but these are tutorial sessions where you can come and get your doubts cleared, so you can join in live if you have any doubts, or you can basically listen to them on YouTube. So okay, so we have these three kinds of hair. The lanugo hair, these are found in embryos, which are mostly they are found in a 3-month old embryo, and they develop at that time, and they're mostly shed after the baby is born. We have terminal hair, which is the hair on our head. These are highly pigmented hair, and they absorb high amounts of UV radiation. And the third type of hair is the vellus hair, which covers the rest of our body, and it is slightly less pigmented than the hair on the top of our head or the terminal hair. Okay. Okay. The next accessory gland that we have, which is related to the skin, are the sweat glands. And there are two different types of sweat glands that we have. One are apocrine glands, and one are uh, exocrine glands. Eccrine glands. Okay. So basically, these ones, the eccrine glands, they basically have sweat pores directly in the skin, and these apocrine glands, I think they release their sweat with through these hair pores. Okay. And coming to the structure of the nail, so basically all of us have nails, and there is a certain structure to these, and let's try and get to know the different parts of the hair, of the nail. So what is this uh, foremost section of the nail called, which is like the outermost section? What is this called? Anyone? This section right here, or say this section? Anyone? Free edge, correct. This is called the free edge of the nail. And then this one, the one that is basically opposite to the free edge, lunula. Very good. This is the lunula. And what is this layer of skin called under the, which is found under the nail here? No? Okay. So this layer is basically the dermis that we discussed earlier. So the nail is like a section of the epidermis, and the layer below that is the dermis. So we have these different sections. As you said, this is the lunula. This is the free edge. Here is the dermis. This section here is called the eponychium, and the section on the opposite of this is the hyponychium, and we have the nail bed and the germinal matrix. So there are these are the different parts that are found in the nail structure. Okay, so this was all about skin and the integumentary system. I will not be discussing bones and cartilages in today's tutorial. We'll now be moving on to the Q&A session to discuss some of the potential questions that might be asked from these from this week's lectures. So the first question is, which pigment in our body absorbs UV rays? So we have discussed this in quite some detail. So can you guys tell me which pigment in the body? Melanin. Correct. The correct answer to this is melanin. What are the vesicles called that contain melanin? The vesicles that contain melanin, what are they called? And what are the cells that contain melanosomes called? Correct. So we have melanin, which is the pigment. It is present in vesicles called melanosomes, and these melanosomes are present in cells which are called melanocytes. Okay. So second question, metabolism of which of these molecules in our body is directly linked with sunlight? So it is kind of like an extension of the previous question. So, metabolism of which of these molecules in our body is directly linked with sunlight? Vitamin D, yes. So, every one of us is aware that vitamin D is basically linked directly with sunlight. When we absorb UV rays, the melanocytes help in the production of vitamin D. Okay. The appendages that connect muscle to bone are called. We're talking about the connection of muscles to bones. Anyone? Tendon, correct. So, tendons are basically the appendages that connect muscles to bones. And the other one, the appendages that connect bones to bones, these are called ligaments. Correct. So, basically, when we're talking about the connection between muscle and muscle, that is done, muscle and bone, that is tendons, and bone to bone is basically ligaments. Next question, which of the following categories does stomach belong to? So, what is this stomach? I think this is a very basic question. Organ, correct. So, stomach is an organ of the organ system, which is the digestive system. Yeah. So, which of these is not a muscle type? So, we have different types of muscles. Which of these is not one of the muscle types? There is skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and which of these is not a muscle? Rough muscle. Correct. So, we don't have anything that's called the rough muscle in our body. But we have the other three. Cardiac muscle is found in the heart, skeletal muscles is found in the skeletals, and smooth muscles is the involuntary muscle in different parts of the body. So correct, rough muscle. Human hair is mostly made up of dash. Human hair is made up of dash. Carbohydrates, lipids, flax, or protein. Protein is the correct answer. So, what kind of a protein is found in the human hair? Keratin. Yes, we've already discussed this. Which of the following joints allow movement in multiple planes? So, which of the joints allow movement in multiple planes of motion? Is it the ball and socket, the hinge joint, the pivot in the hinge joint, or none of them? Which of the joints allows movement in multiple planes? The ball and the socket joint. Correct. So, the ball and the socket joint is one such joint which allows movement in multiple different planes. Anyone can give me an example of a ball and socket joint? Anyone? Examples of balls and socket joints? Leg. Which joint of the leg are you talking about? In the shoulder, correct. So shoulder is a ball and socket joint. We can move the shoulder in, the arm in any directions from the shoulder because it's a ball and socket joint. And the leg, as Vishwajit said, the connection between the leg and the hip is a ball and socket joint. So thank you. This was all for today's tutorial. And if you want to know more about the bones and cartilages, you can join the tutorial on Tuesday and you will get to know more about that, I guess. Okay, people, we can wrap this up. Everybody can leave if you have no doubts. If anybody has any doubts, you can stay back and ask me the questions that you might have. Thank you for joining. This lecture, this presentation will be shared on the NPTL, and this lecture will also be, the recording will also be shared on YouTube.